I am Jana Blazek, and I work with the Presbytery of Chicago office. And I am so excited to have Amy Pagliarella with us today. She wears an awful lot of hats, but one of the hats she wears that makes her an exceptional leader for us this morning is that she is the book editor for the Presbyterian Outlook magazine. So she gets her hands on new Advent resources often before the rest of us even know that they have come out into the world. So she's going to lead us through a conversation today, and it really is a conversation. She's going to share some of what she's learned this year and in past years about good resources and things that could be helpful either toward preaching or education or small group study, or I would guess even personal study. But we also want to hear from you what questions you're wrestling with in your context, what tools you've found that have really helped you with Advent. If you've come across a real clunker, you're invited to share that too, to save others the pain that you've gone through. So as we go through, Amy's really going to start and walk us through some of the tools and resources she's learned about. If you have a question or something you want to share, feel free to raise your hand and we'll bring you into the conversation. But know at the end, there's going to be time set aside for us all to talk with each other, with Amy, to ask questions of her and of each other. You all know so much about what's happening on the congregational level. So this is an opportunity for us to learn from each other. This is lunchtime, so do not be shy about eating your lunch or drinking your coffee or whatever it is you've brought with you. This is, in my fantasies, we'd all be together in a church fellowship hall, sitting around a big table, sharing lunch together. But since we're not, feel free to do what you need to do for this hour. I want to let you know that next month in November, our Lunch and Learn is going to be with Reverend Julio Pena, who's the newest addition to the Presbytery staff as our Director of Faithful Innovation. And so he's going to join us to share about some happenings in the new worshiping communities world and talk with us about revitalization grants for congregations in the Presbytery. As we get started, I'd love for us to go around and introduce ourselves. Tell us your name, what church you're from, and what your role there is. If you're a pastor, an elder, if you serve on a committee. And then Amy has given us this question for you to answer. And it's, what is an Advent practice or ritual in your home or church that has been particularly meaningful to you, either this year or in years past? So since I'm talking, I will start us off. Again, Jana Blazek with the Presbytery. And I have loved preaching Advent each year, mostly because I love that Jesus knows we need reminders, and the liturgical calendar reminds us that we have to tell the story from year to year to be reminded about the things that we know we believe, but sometimes aren't in the forefront of our awareness. So Stuart, can I invite you to introduce yourself next?
Hi, folks. I'm Stuart Barnes Jameson. I'm a pastor of Carter Westminster United Presbyterian Church in Skokie, Illinois. And I think, the Advent candle lighting ceremonies have been pretty cool, I think, that we've found. Some of them have been from Presbyterian resources. But I also do like preaching. I end up sort of preaching thematically and, the hope, joy, love, themes of Advent. So, yeah. And the candle lighting liturgies, of course, are based on those too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Greg, can I call on you to go next?
I was waiting for that. Greg Morton. I'm with Clarendon Hills Presbyterian or Community Presbyterian in Clarendon Hills, and I am an elder and chair the Mission Education and Outreach Committee, um, as well as a bunch of other stuff at the church. But um, a lot of things that I've loved over the years, of course, children's pageants are always fun. And I've been intrigued in recent years to discover some that tell the story in very, very different ways and that are somewhat humorous. So, thanks.
Thank you. Elizabeth, can I ask you to go next?
Sure. I'm Liz Holford. I am specialized clergy. I'm the manager of formation for Ascension, Illinois. We're a Catholic healthcare system. And Presbyterian teaching elder. And so my absolute favorite Advent tradition was what I grew up with, was that every Sunday in Advent we would sing O Come Emmanuel, but we would build each week, adding on a verse each time, and that was just my favorite thing in the world. And then growing up, we did the Advent candles at home and everything. So one of the reasons why I wanted to come to our time together today is that we write Advent reflections for the staff at our hospitals. And so I'm always looking for resources that have creative things to say and new things or different ways of saying things that have been said before about Advent. But yeah, I love the season too.
Thank you, Liz. Linda?
Um, Community Presbyterian Church, Clarendon Hills. I'm an elder and on the ME and O committee, like Greg and Bob. And we're planning Advent with a new interim pastor and a new associate pastor coming up, trying to find out what they want. Let's see, as a child, I guess the pageants, it's all I remember. But we had started having the Advent candles at home, purple candles and one white one. And that was nice. And I like that. In our church, and also the Christmas tree is different. It's not a Christmas tree. It has symbols of Jesus. And that's fun. It's a fun time.
Lovely. Thank you, Linda. Bob Parsons.
Well, first of all, I should explain that I'm not showing you my face because I fell a week ago and my face is an awful, awful appearing mask of black and blue.
Ah, Bob.
Oh, Bob.
I am not a serving elder. I was ordained something like 50 years ago, but I am not currently serving. I guess growing up, we did not have any emphasis on Advent, although we were very regular participants in church. And back 100 years ago, when I was actually part of Christian education, I was interested in and stimulated by considerations of incarnation, and I don't remember the resource that we actually used, but that was the thing that was a significant thing for me. It's interesting to me that the things that the other folks here have reflected on are things from childhood, because I don't have that reflection, and I'm just thinking about my time as an adult.
Well,
I-
that's helpful, Bob. That's why the diversity of voices is so good here, and we pray for healing for you. I am sorry to hear it.
well, I am too.
Yeah. Brent, can I call on you next?
Yeah, so sharing who we are, what congregation we're in, and
Yes. So for those who've just joined us, Jana put our question in the chat, and the icebreaker is, what is an Advent practice or ritual, either at home or church, that has been meaningful to you?
yeah, so I'm Brent Anderson. I'm the transitional pastor at River Glen Presbyterian Church in Naperville. And the ritual that's meaningful to me is always the Advent candle lighting. And I always pair it with O Come Emmanuel, singing at least two verses of that hymn, changing them each Sunday. Always singing verse one and then choosing one of the others.
Nice, thank you. Am I saying this right? Is it Glauber Ribeiro? If you would like,
Good enough, close
could
enough.
you
Glauber
could you
Ribeiro.
say it for us, please? I apologize.
Glauber Ribeiro.
Glauber,
Yeah,
welcome. Would you
thank
like
you.
to introduce yourself?
Oh, I am a minister at large with the Chicago Presbytery, helping out at the St. Andrew UMC in Carroll Stream. I have responsibilities with the praise band. I'm also in the pulpit supply for the Presbytery, so it's around from time to time. And in terms of Advent practices, nothing really. I just grew up with the secular version of Christmas and detest it. And
Okay.
I like this idea of emphasizing Advent instead of Christmas. But it's I really don't have any meaningful practice to share. I was just hoping to learn.
Well, maybe you'll walk away with something today. We're glad
Yeah.
you're here. And I
And I'm
don't,
sorry if I have to leave early too, because I work at home and I may be called away for something.
no worries. No worries. Um, uh, James and Autumn have also joined us, and I don't want to impose if they're still getting settled, but James, if you can hear me, would you like to take yourself off mute and introduce yourself? You're still on mute. You're still on mute, James. And Autumn, as James is getting himself off mute, but then after James, Autumn, if you'd like to introduce yourself, we'll go to you. James,
Okay.
wonderful. James, would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, yes. I'm James Singh. I'm actually in specialized ministries. I'm mainly interested in evangelism. I don't have a parish, but I'm interested in this webinar as a preparation for Advent season. I'm very much interested in uh, sharing the meaning of, what we call Magnificat, Mary's song, which is found in Luke chapter 1. So I, Joanne, if I would be able to find some suggestions as to how you present that message today for a non-Christian as well as within the church. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's helpful. Thank you. Do you have a
Mm.
ritual you want to share?
No,
Okay,
not this time.
perfect. And last but not least, Autumn, hi, good to see
Hi,
you.
you
Please
too.
introduce yourself, your church, and then if you want to share an Advent ritual or experience that you find particularly meaningful.
Okay. So yeah, I'm Autumn, and I'm the youth minister at Northminster Presbyterian Church in Evanston. And one of the things that we do is that our junior high writes a script and acts out sort of, it's our message for the day. During Advent, we do a children's worship service. So the junior highs do this for the children of the church, and the senior highs work on liturgy, and they also serve as liturgists. And so, we've done a bunch of different themes for Advent, and I'm always looking for a new sort of direction and take. And our church is going to be using Illustrated Ministries Advent curriculum. Um, so, I'll refer to some of that, but I'm just always curious about what's out there for Advent. And in terms of rituals, were you thinking like personal rituals that you do at
At
home?
home, at church, people have mentioned candle lighting or other Christmas pageants, anything at all.
Right. So we do the Advent wreath, but we also at our house we have a spiral, an Advent spiral, and there's a candle and there are little holes around the spiral, and you walk the candle each day forward, and there's a little Mary and Joseph and a and then they walk along, and then when you get to the center, there's a couple barn animals and a cradle basically, and on Christmas morning we put the little Jesus in there. So it's just a way of with my kids and me, and my husband, to slow down during Advent, because it feels like you hit the ground and it just is gone in a blink. And so it's a way to sort of each day just slow things down and be
Thank
mindful.
you, Autumn. And thank you, everyone else, for introducing yourselves and sharing. I'll introduce myself. As Jana said, I'm Amy Pagliarella, and I'm a part of the Presbytery of Chicago, but I'm also the book review editor for the Presbyterian Outlook. And so one of the things I do is, every publisher, there are more books out there than we could possibly ever hope to read. And most of them are very good, but they're not all great, and they don't all serve the same need. And so what I do is I go through as many of them as I can and try to highlight what would be particular reasons you could choose one over the other, or what works in different contexts. And that's what we're going to talk about today. My own story, you can see I put up my little nativity set in the background just a little early, so that we'd have that to enjoy today. And one of my favorite traditions, I served for about 10 years in Lake Forest at the church there as the pastor for children. And I was trained in the godly play approach, the young children in worship approach. And one of the things that they do is you learn to tell the story very slowly. And as Autumn just mentioned, right? Sometimes the season just, it just takes off at breakneck speed. And so I loved that experience of learning just to relish the story. And I think that is the core here of Advent, is that there's a reason that we try to slow down at this time of year, is because the Advent story is a good story. The Christmas story is a great story. I mean, all of these are times where I think people, despite our busyness, are feeling a little more tender, maybe a little more open to trying new rituals. Maybe they don't normally read a devotional, but they want to take one up for Advent. There are lots of different ways into the season, both for experienced Christians, newcomers, or seekers, everyone. And so when you look at different resources, my first suggestion is to kind of take a step back and think, like, what is most important to me? Some of you might be looking for resources just for yourselves to kind of feed yourselves during the season. So we're going to talk about some of those. Some of you might be looking for something explicit around, like some of our friends from Clarendon Hills. It sounds like we've got the adult ed committee here. Maybe you're hoping to do a Bible study or an Advent study. We're going to talk about resources that are great for small groups. Others of you, like Liz, you mentioned looking for daily devotional inspiration. And so some of what we're going to talk about is either something you could purchase and use as is, or something that you and your team can guide yourselves to write your own devotions. And so we'll talk through a lot of these. I can't see all of you on my screen, and so I would love to be interrupted. If you have a question, I would prefer, rather than wait till the end, interrupt me, call it out, knowing that I might not see if you raise your hand, and we'll talk about it. And then we'll leave some time at the end for people to share the things that they found particularly useful. But that first question about sort of what's your context, what feeds you, what feeds your folks, right? And so I think I've kind of looked at some different categories and what are some good choices for those categories. And so the first category I have is more your traditional, you have a small group that maybe meets online or meets in person at the church, Sunday mornings, Wednesday nights, whatever it is. And this year, some of these books I'll hold up. Some of them I read on Kindle, so we'll have to imagine. But this is A Child is Born by Amy Jill Levine. And if you've ever used any of her studies, this is very consistent with those. She's a New Testament scholar, so the scholarship is going to be top notch. But she's also kind of fun and lighthearted and accessible. She's got some little puns and jokes in her writing, and so she makes it easy to read. And what she also does is they provide online resources. So if you say you have a small group leader, you want to be able to hand this to them. That's with Abington Press. You can buy a leader's guide that will make it easier. Maybe you kind of know yourself and you know that during Advent, you're not able to spend hours and hours preparing for your Wednesday night study. Just know that that leader's guide is going to be a great resource for you. This is also, when I say it's scholarly, this is for people who want a little bit of scholarship. So she goes back and talks about Isaac and Ishmael, Moses, Samson, Samuel's other stories about babies being born and that sort of lead up to the birth of Jesus. And she's going to go a little bit here and there into the Greek or into the Hebrew to tell you what a word means and how that's useful. So that's why I say this is, your folks, right? You know if they're going to enjoy, oh, aha, I didn't know that about the connection between the story of Hagar and the story of Mary. Or you're going to know if they're like, yeah, I didn't come here for a seminary class. I came here to connect with others. And so then you would know what the right choice is for them. Um, Again, feel free to interrupt me as I go. One of the other things I love about Advent is, we don't only have to look at Advent resources, right? So there are other resources out there that kind of live beyond Advent. And one of these is something that just came out. It's called For Such a Time as This, an emergency devotional. It's by Hannah Reichel, and they are a professor at Princeton Theological Seminary. So like you're not going to have to be concerned about the theology in this book. It's very much Reformed theology, and it's Reformed theology applied to For Such a Time as This. And so if you have folks in your congregation who are saying like, how can I be expected to like sit here and think about the baby Jesus when I feel like the world is a hot mess? This is the kind of guide that you might offer them. And so what they do that's really useful is it's written with enough entries for you could read from Thanksgiving until Christmas, and people could read it on their own. But there's also like a bit of in the back, I'm going to try to show you a little bit, questions for reflection and ways that you could engage with this as a group. So people could read it each day. If they wanted to, they could also get together once a week, discuss, think about how to apply this to their lives. It's not like an off the shelf, hand it to a leader kind of guide. You would have to do a little bit of work with it. But if that's what you're looking for, this would be an excellent choice. And it's nice because it lives on beyond Advent. I will tell you too, the publisher just sent me a thing that they've got a special deal for book groups that you get access to more of a leader's guide and you get access to a discount. So I will make that available to people. But after this session, I'll email that to everybody.
How do you spell the last name?
Yes,
How,
Reichel, Reichel.
Thank
And
you.
I will include that in the email. So in the email that I have to go out afterward, I don't want everybody like going on to Amazon while we're talking. So that's why I'm not putting the links in the chat right now. But
Sure.
before we wrap up, I'll make sure everybody has those links. And should I not have said Amazon, what I meant to say was I didn't want everyone going to bookshop.org to buy it. Although if you go after and buy it at bookshop.org, I will be very happy. If this is something that's kind of speaking to you, but you're thinking, well, I still want something a little more Advent-y. Here's where I would go back to some choices from a few years ago. So most of what I'm going to start with these are the recent releases. But here's the thing, all of these publishers every year they come out with Advent guides and devotions. And it's not as though the story of the baby Jesus has changed so much from 2023 until now. So you may find resources from previous years that are still really good. And here's one of them called Holy Disruption. And this is about Advent in the Gospel of Mark. And what it says basically is there's no baby in the Gospel of Mark. And yet we still, through Mark, find a way into Advent. Yes, holy disruption, Batman, is what I'm seeing in the chat. I love that. Yeah, and so this is one, again, if you have people who are feeling we are in this disruptive time, we need an appropriate resource, that would be very appropriate. Similarly, Tom Long came out with, I think in 2023, it's called A Surprising God, and it's subtitled Advent Devotions for an Uncertain Time. So, a good reminder, we might think our time is uniquely uncertain. The people, when was born, were living in an uncertain time, right? Christians have often lived in uncertain times. And so, there are a lot of good resources out there. I want to highlight this year Westminster John Knox's. Oh, pardon me, I'm just getting rid of that. There we go. Westminster John Knox is a very traditionally Presbyterian publisher. So there are some churches that basically every year they go to what does Westminster John Knox offer? And I think that's a perfectly appropriate decision. What they do this year is called the Advent Tree. And it takes the idea of the Jesse tree as a way into the story this year. And so what I wanted to highlight is to take that as an example for sometimes churches are looking for something intergenerational or something that they can explicitly do with children. And I have to say, I sometimes find the resources for that are a little bit wanting. And so sometimes you have to be a little bit creative. And so this is a book called The Jesse Tree. It's a children's book from a number of years ago, but it is still available out there. And what you could do if you liked Westminster John Knox's offering, the Advent Tree, you could pair it with the children's offering, the Jesse Tree. And what it does is, this is just a great the idea of the Jesse tree, if you're not familiar with it, is that, if we trace Jesus' lineage back to Jesse, the father of King David, that we see his role within within history, within God's plan. And so the Jesse tree is a really accessible story for children, kind of as a story within a story. It takes the idea of a man who is a carpenter, who is carving in the church. And as he carves, he tells the young boy the different stories that he's carving. So it's a really nice way if you wanted to do something that children and families could do together. You could combine that with the Advent tree. What I like about that too is I'm a parent. My kids now are 16 and 18, so we're in a little bit of a different place. But when my kids were little, I didn't really need like two things to do. I needed a thing to do. And so if I could find a book that told the stories to my children and fed me at the same time, that was a gift. I wasn't necessarily going to be able to get away to go to a Wednesday night study or, something like that. So that's kind of a neat way to do that if you're looking for something with children. There is one more resource for children from a few years ago, and this is a great one if you're looking for something intergenerational. It's called Advent in Narnia. And you might remember the Narnia stories like the C.S. Lewis, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And it's a devotional for adults, but it has a whole big section at the back for how would you use this with children and in an intergenerational setting. Now, I look at this, what the idea there, and of course, all of these are scalable depending on the size and the resources of your church. But I think of Advent in Narnia as something, if you have people in your congregation who show up with serious vacation Bible school energy, they might find this exciting because there's a whole plan for how you can transform your fellowship hall and you can do intergenerational activities. Some churches are that, oh my gosh, that's exhausting. I can't even consider it. But for the right people, that could be really invigorating and meaningful. So that's a good example if you're looking for something for your whole church or for families to do together. I'm going to take a break if there are a quick break if there are any questions or anything you want to interrupt with. Okay, terrific. Then we'll keep powering through. Um, as I mentioned too, a lot of times there are resources from previous years that are really, really good. And so I'm kind of the school of if you didn't do it, it's in the past, it's new to you, it's new to your people. They don't care that it was from 2020 or 2024. And one of those examples is this book, Season's Greetings. It's by Ruth Bowling. Anybody remember the children's books with the church mice? That was Ruth Bowling. And last year she came back with this fantastic book subtitled Christmas Letters from Those Who Were Here. I'm sorry, from those who were there. And a couple of you in our icebreaker mentioned how much you liked Christmas pageants. And this has a little bit of like a Christmas pageant feel to it. It basically is a story written in the first person, sort of imagining the experiences of all the people who were there at the birth of Jesus. And so some of them are people you might expect, like the shepherds or Mary. But other of them are sort of imagining there was probably a midwife who was there. And what might she have been thinking about while this was unfolding? And so, what I love about this is, first off, it's just really fun and accessible. You could read it yourself just to give yourself a little insight into your preaching or into being able to tell and retell the story. You could also, if you had a congregation who likes to do drama, you could have a different person tell one or more of these stories on Sunday mornings in worship. You could do it in a pageant format. If you have teenagers, this would be very accessible for them to take on the different characters. Adults could also do it. There's so many ways that you could really use this. But it would also be great for a small group because it includes reflection questions at the end. And then it invites you at the very end to write your own letter. So again, that could be something really meaningful in a small group as well as on Sunday mornings. So I love this book. Any of you who have joined us since I gave the introduction, please rest assured that you don't have to be writing everything down. I will make all of this available to you. I just have one more resource I want to highlight from previous years, and that is this little series of books from InterVarsity Press. And they have a book on Advent, a book on Christmas, and a book on Epiphany. And what I like about these is I kind of consider these to be devotionals for people who say they don't like devotionals. And I have talked to people, no, I don't do devotionals. I'm not interested. Okay, fine. These aren't devotionals, but they are scholarly, devoted reading. And InterVarsity Press, I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. They tend to be a little bit more of an evangelical publisher. And so I'm always looking like, is the theology something that most people are going to be comfortable with? And I think for these, the answer is yes. Tish Harrison Warren wrote their piece on Advent. You might remember her. She was a New York Times columnist until fairly recently. Their book on Epiphany is written by Fleming Rutledge, who is a very respected Episcopalian priest. And these are accessible, scholarly, and they're short. So you could use them in the same way you could use devotional reading. I also think I alluded to earlier that it doesn't have to be Advent to be useful in Advent. And another example of that is a devotional called Give Me a Word. This is by Christine Walters Painter. She did an excellent Lenten devotional last year that I highly recommended. And what I like about this is this would be something for you, something that you would enjoy reading on your own if you are a little bit more of a contemplative Christian. And it's something you certainly could do it in a group. You could do it at a retreat if you wanted to. But I think it really works best because the idea is there's like kind of, you know how some of us have started doing star words for Epiphany. And the idea is that you receive a word and that word kind of guides you for the year. This is a similar approach, but she invites you to seek that word. And sometimes seeking that word takes time. So you could start this at the beginning of Advent and experience some of the practices and some of what she describes, and then see if a word bubbles up. And a word might emerge pretty quickly, in which case you can use that word throughout Advent as well as 2026. And sometimes it takes time. And so you could really, during Advent, just continue to sit with this devotional, let that word emerge for you, and then that you would have something that you could continue to use into 2026. So these are all I love this one. It's just a really great devotional for personal reading, and I encourage you to check it out. I hadn't planned to mention this last one, but so many of you mentioned candle lighting that I'll add it to my list afterward and make sure you receive it. Brian Wren wrote a wonderful guide for Christmas and Advent liturgies. And it includes really terrific liturgies for Advent candle lighting. And that lifting up that resource is a great way for kind of my parting words on this, which is these resources exist for a reason. A lot of us, our time is tight. Maybe we're a one-person show, or maybe we're a volunteer. We don't have to do everything ourselves when there are people out there who do this really, really well and make it available to us. And so you don't have to write your own candle lighting liturgy. Use the ones that Brian Wren has written. They're gorgeous. Use the ones that are out there on the internet. Remember that there are lots of terrific resources out there. So I'm gonna take a break and invite people, if you have questions or if you have this sparked something that you want to encourage the group to seek out, this would be the time to do that. And if you take yourself off mute, I'm going to kind of assume you've got something to share.
Thanks, Amy. This is really helpful. I've gotten in the habit the last couple of about this time of year to go to the PC USA store and see what Advent devotional. And and then I preach, and I used it for preaching on. Last year I used I forgot the name of the author, but I think it's called Calling All Angels.
Calling All Angels, yeah.
Yeah, that was the concept there was that's it. The four times that an angel, during the Christmas story, when an angel came and said, "Do not fear," to somebody. And I really enjoyed it. It was a good read, and it was a good, thing to preach on.
That's great.
Yeah, and so that was, and it wasn't, it took me off the lectionary, but it was good. And I mean, the other concept that I thought was in her introduction, she talks about how do not fear, do not be afraid shows up like 365 times in the Bible, which gets me curious about, doing one a day or something like that, if that's indeed true. So that was very interesting. And then this year, somebody in my congregation is kind of interested in exploring the concept in our Advent thinking about the second coming. And so, what does all that really mean? And so, so a couple of things on that is, we're thinking about doing maybe 3 Wednesday nights, something, and I think this will be the focus of that. But I'm also said, hey, I'm willing to preach on it. And so the book that I found for that is Heaven and Earth. I think it's by Will Willimon. And
Yeah.
it looks like it talks about the second. I mean, talk about the incarnation, but I think it also seems to talk about, getting prepared, he's coming, all of that. So I think it'll be Willimon should be a good book. So there's that. And the person that in my church that wants to do this second coming is, she was trained at Moody and all of that. And she said, I've been doing some research on this concept, and I've gone 180 degrees on the concept of second coming from her Moody years. And the other thing that I think might be part of the preaching or the Wednesday night things are a look at Zionism. I think we need to explore that. And I think that kind of relates to the second coming thing. And there was something else I was going to say. About I just barely started the Heaven and Earth book, but his first chapter is about I think the same passage in Matthew that is the first for the first Advent passage about you don't know when the time is coming and all of that, so it'd be appropriate. So
That sounds
so yeah,
great,
and the other thing that I've been thinking about it, but the timing doesn't really work is I saw just looking at the bookstore thing now, I saw that there's one on using the Messiah, Handel's Messiah as an Advent. And we will have a Messiah concert this year. And I've thought about that would be a cool Advent theme too. The problem I see with it is that our concert's like really early on in December. And I thought, well, timing's not really right. One year we had it quite late in December, and I think that would have been neat to do it that year. But anyway, it's just a couple of thoughts I have.
Yeah, thank you. James, did you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you for all this resource here. I was interested in something for the public outside. I am not. I don't have a parish. Karl Barth used to say, when you read your Bible, you should have a newspaper. On your other hand, or with that. And today, I think the newspaper is like CNN and MSNBC and Fox News and BBC. Now, what message would I have from the Mary song with these newspapers in my hand? So I don't know if you have anything in your mind that you can tell me.
Yeah, I'll give a brief answer and then I'll open it up to the group. But I think, so to me, Mary's song is one of the ways that we are relevant to the rest of the world, right? Is that we point to something like an emergency devotional, right? Which says we are not Christians, are not Pollyanna, feel good, and we're also not always net Christian nationalists. We're also people who are in the muck of this current time. And we are people who have always been in the messes of their current time, working for justice. And sometimes I had a conversation fairly recently with a church member who was really concerned about our emphasis on justice and why are we focusing on justice rather than on the Christian gospel. And he and I were able to have a really, I think, healthy conversation around how, well, actually, justice is inherent in everything that we do. And so, who better to respond to such a time as this than passionate Christians who want to love their neighbor in an active way? And Mary's song feeds right into that. Anybody, I've talked a lot. Anybody have an idea of how you are doing that in your settings? I know just this morning, Jana, I saw Magdalena had a piece in the Presbytery newsletter, Magdalena Garcia of she's part of a bilingual church with a lot of Spanish speaking people who I can imagine are feeling very singled out these days. And then I just saw David Black on the news being tear gassed as he stood out to pray. And so there are Presbyterians in our midst who are out there doing things, and we can kind of keep in touch with what they're doing and figure out how does that fit with our Advent witness, right? How does
Mhm,
that fit with
mhm,
people in
mhm.
darkness seeing a great light? Jessica, you've got your hand up.
Um, One thing that Northminster has done since June, alongside other faith communities in Evanston, is offer Beacon of Light protests. The Beacon protests began in New York City, I think at Union Seminary. But the idea is that we are called to be a beacon of light in this time of shadows. And so, you know, trying to make it as hyper local as possible. These protests are positive. Things like, ban bigotry, not books, and we have all these different signs. And we gather at 3 different locations in Evanston, from the southernmost part to the northwest side where Northminster is. And it's folks from all different faith communities coming together to bear witness to who it is we are called to be as Christians, as humans, as people of faith. And the groups haven't been huge, but our little corner has been 15 people every Thursday night. It's just a half hour, but it's regular, and it offers a reminder of us being in the world, not just of the world. So it's been great.
Thank you, Jessica. That's awesome.
Can I sort of build on that and your question and what James was saying too? Is I've actually been finding the lectionary with the prophecies of Jeremiah and Lamentations to be really, really helpful readings and preaching on right now, especially. But I've also been spending a lot of time in the Timothy's, First and Second Timothy, in my preaching. They just seem to be really, and for me, they just very apropos and informative and challenging for these times.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, Stuart.
Yeah, you're welcome back. Come this Sunday to Carter, James, and you'll hear.
Yeah, we'll meet again. Okay.
Anyone else have a question or something they want to share with the group? Yes, Jessica.
I come late and then I talk often. That's great. My question is, we've chosen to use the Illustrated Ministries Dare to Dream Advent package, their theme. And so I'm wondering if you can recommend any books that are particularly about dreams, biblical dreams, that might be a nice supplement to that, all the stuff that the Illustrated Ministry will be offering.
Boy, that is a great question. Nothing is coming to mind off the top of my head, but I am going to think about that. Anybody else have something to offer? When I send out resources, if I come across anything, I will add that.
That'd be great. Thanks, Amy.
Yeah, sure.
Just a comment. I
right.
I had the opportunity to preach a few years ago, and I preached about Joseph, the father of Jesus, and all of Joseph's connection with God was through dreams.
Yeah.
That's right.
It was spoken to 3 different times in dreams, and only in dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Throw that out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that book I mentioned, Calling All Angels, I think it talks about dreams in this section about Joseph, if I'm not mistaken, because I believe Joseph is one of the 4 characters that gets that "do not be afraid" message. So, yeah. And what is Illustrated Ministries? What is that?
Autumn or Jessica, do you want to describe that?
Well, it's a, a company that specializes in offering ministry resources to it used to be they used to be children's illustrated ministry, so they would offer like beautiful ornate coloring pages about that illustrate different scripture, but they've really become much more comprehensive in their offerings, and now they offer resources for adults and for kids, for Bible study, I mean for Vacation Bible School. Um, and for Lent, for Advent, they have little backpack tags. They have resources for every aspect of the church year that you can take as much or as little from. But we have not used one of their Advent themes previously. This is a new thing we're trying. But they're a group, it was actually started by Adam Walker Cleveland, who used to be at the Chicago Presbytery. They now live up in Milwaukee, but it's about 10 years old. And, Adam's a good Presbyterian, it's very reformed, very progressive theology. It's great. So I invite you to check it out, illustratedministry.com.
Thanks for the link, Brent. Does Ariane Lane work for this? Is this the one she works for?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're
Exactly.
making the connection, Stuart.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Greg.
And a similar resource is a place. It's called Sanctified Arts, and that's something that our former pastor brought to us seasonally for several years, and they have wonderful artwork as well as commentary that we used for Advent and for Lent for several years.
Thank you, Greg. Yeah, a sanctified art is what Greg was saying, and they are terrific. And then somebody put a song in the chat as well, so make sure to check that out if you're interested. This is great. Oh, and thank you. Brent is our volunteer poster in the chat, so thank you for that, Brent. Anyone else want to share a resource or ask a question of the group? Yes, Linda.
I think it was last or 2 years ago, our group used a book called On the Road to Bethlehem, which I liked quite a lot. I'm not sure everybody else did, but it covered all the cities that surrounded Jesus that had to do with his birth. Nazareth and Herod, whatever Herod was doing. And I just thought it really, for me, it set the scene. This is what was going on. This is the world that Jesus came into. So I liked it. Heaven
On the road
on
to
the road
Bethlehem
to
gets a
Bethlehem.
recommendation from Linda. Yeah, I believe that's from Abington Press, if I remember correctly.
Exactly.
And I think, it's a publisher that usually releases at least 2 different choices every year. And so those are, that's often nice when you find a publisher that you like that, you kind of know they follow a similar format. They're very friendly for a group that's looking to be facilitated. And then it's just sort of a matter of what is your preferred way into the story? As Linda said, for that, it was sort of understanding the different places in the story. A little bit of a similar approach to Amy Jill Levine. Her way into the story is, here are all these other babies in the Bible. And then here are all these places in the Bible, different ways, but all to kind of get to a shared story. We probably have time for one more resource if anyone has one they want to lift up. Okay, terrific. Someone else is recommending, Al Glaber is recommending Marcus Borg. So yes, one of their good reminder, like there are some resources that just stand the test of time and you can always return to them. So I appreciate you putting that one out there as well. I would be remiss if I didn't remind you that the Presbyterian Outlook also has a resource. My colleagues write at Lent and at Advent write a daily devotional. And here's what I love about it. First off, they always just do really, really good work. It's really beautiful, thoughtfully written, and it's just very easy. You can order it on our website. It comes to you as either you can print it in-house as a booklet. You can email it every day to your congregation members. Liz, you could use it as a starting point for what you're looking to do with your team, and then you can print it and put it in the Sunday bulletins. And so that is a really nice resource. I was preaching a couple of years ago up at Highland Park Presbyterian. Somebody came up to me, oh my goodness, do you know Terry McDowell Ott? I just love her devotions. So I know that I'm not the only one who's finding those useful. I also, speaking of the Presbyterian Outlook, if you have the big calendar that the PCUSA sells every year, it has an advertisement from the Outlook in it. And if you go to that advertisement, you can buy at a significant discount a subscription to the Presbyterian Outlook. And that will give you both the magazine and it will give you a digital subscription. So I'm going to include in my resources that are going to go out to you, I'll include a couple links to things at the Outlook, but just know that I think you can click on 3 of those before the paywall kicks in. And then you're going to say, oh no, what should I do? You could subscribe to the Presbyterian Outlook. I'm going to, unless there are any final quick questions, I am going to send us off with a blessing. And this is my final resource of the day. This was from a few years ago, and it's called Ordinary Blessings for the Christmas Season. It's gorgeous. It would be something that you would want to buy as a gift to your pastor friends or your churchy friends. But this is a blessing for when you need a Christmas miracle. So everybody just take a nice deep breath. Let it out. Before we continue into this day, just remember these words. Set this blessing, slender and sturdy, like a candle in the window, watching and waiting, shining so someone will see and believe that little things can matter a lot, and miracles can look a lot like love that's paying attention. Blessings to you this day and this Advent season. Thank you for joining us for this Lunch and Learn, and thank you to Jana and the Presbytery for making it happen.
Oh, thank you, Amy, for so many good recommendations and insights into things that may not have been on our wish list or our desk previously. And thank you to you all for spending your lunch hour with us and sharing the tools that you found helpful. We're really grateful for this conversation and this opportunity to share. So, blessings on the rest of your afternoon. Go in peace.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.